of atheism. And we'll speak this on basis of these two verses from the Bhagavad-Gita. See, many people say, believe in God, we don't believe in God. It's just a matter of personal choice. We think of belief in God as just a inconsequential personal choice. I believe, you don't believe. But actually, belief in God, what it means, and not believing in God, what it implies, that needs to be understood carefully. So let's look at these two verses. It's a 16.8 and 16.9 in the Bhagavad Gita. I'll explain the verse, then we'll recite it once. So, asatyam apratishtamte jagad ahur anishwaram. So Krishna says, those who think that the world is anishwaram, that there is no Ishvara, there is no God, what they are essentially implying by that is, if there is anishwaram, then asatyam, that actually there is no ultimate truth. There is no criteria for deciding what is right, what is wrong, what is true, what is false. Apratishtam, there is no foundation to things. So asatyam apratishtamte jagat ahur anishwaram. And what is the result of it? So from a philosophical perspective, the result is, okay, there is no foundation left for the world. But from a practical perspective, the result is that aparaspara sambhutam kim anyat kama haitukam. That kama haitukam. Kama can mean desire, specifically it can mean sexual desire. So apart from aparaspara sambhutam, apart from mutual gratification through sex, what other purpose is there for life? So this is technically called as not just materialism, this is hedonism. Hedonism is like a very aggressive and destructive form of materialism, where nothing except sensual pleasure matters. So Krishna says atheism leads to not just materialism but hedonism. And we'll look at what it means a little later. But in this verse, Krishna is talking about the consequence of atheism in one perspective. That continue the next verse, but let's recite this. Asatyam apratishtamte jagadahuranishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kama haitukam. In the next verse he says, etam drishtim avashtabhya. Those who accept such a vision, drishti is vision, avashtabhya, those who accept such a vision, that there is no God, there is no reality, there is no foundation, that sexual pleasure is the purpose of life. What is the result? Nashtatmano. They destroy their soul. Nashtatmano alpabuddhaya. They have intelligence, but it's meager intelligence. It doesn't see far enough. Alpabuddhaya. Prabhavanti ugra karmana. So prabhavanti can means they are born for or they flourish in. They delight in doing ugra karma. Ugra karma is terrible activities. Prabhavanti ugra karmana. And eventually what is the Kshayaya jagato ahitaha. Right? Their activities at the least are jagato ahitaha. They are unbeneficial. But Kshayaya, they can be even destructive. So they destroy their souls, nashtatmano, and they destroy the world also. So Krishna is talking about this worldview has serious consequences. Let's recite the verse. Etam drishtim avashtabhya nashtatmano alpabuddhayah prabhavanti ugra karmanah shayaya jagato ahitaha. So this topic of the disastrous consequences of atheism, in that I'll talk primarily the consequences in terms of the changes with respect to the approach to sexuality. There is in the West what is called as the sexual revolution. You may have heard of scientific revolution, you have French revolution, this revolution, but there's a sexual revolution. Has any of you heard this word before? Sexual revolution? Okay, fortunately, you haven't heard about it. Yeah, unfortunately, you are hearing from it now. But the idea was revolution means there is a radical change. See, reformation means suppose somebody is staying in a house and they say, okay, this house, this wall is not very strong. This paint is not very good. This maybe window shape has to be changed. So reformation is small changes. But revolution means just blow this up and build something else. Just blow it up. So revolution is radical destructive change. The idea is we'll get something better. So there has been a radical sexual revolution in the Western world. And now when we talk about say the West is materialistic and Indian culture is being lost because Western culture is coming in. Now we may talk about, say, man-woman free mixing and having unrestricted interactions. Well, in the West, that is old-fashioned. So that actually, what I mean by this, sexual revolution has gone far beyond just free mixing among men and women. So let's look at it. So we'll talk about this four topics I'll discuss basically. There's a troubling question about a radical change in the sexual morality or sexual values of society. And there is just not just, as I said, there'll be an inversion of morality. And then why has this happened? There's an ideology behind the mentality. And lastly, we'll discuss the challenges and how they can be resolved. So let's consider there's the issue of homosexuality. Now, I'm not going to go into the specifics of homosexuality. I'm just giving an example. See, homosexuals have always existed throughout history. There are always some people who, from the Bhagavad-Gita's perspective, what happens is, when the soul leaves one body and goes to the next body, the soul normally identifies with the next body. So we all were in some body previously, but when we go to the next body, we identify with that body. But just like if you travel suddenly from one country to another country, you travel by plane from America to India, then what happens is that travel is so fast that the body has something called a jet lag. So your body is physically in India, but the body cycles are like based in America. So in America it is night, you feel you're sleepy. Although in India it's daytime only. That's jet lag. So similarly, some souls experience what can be called as transmigration lag. Transmigration lag means what? Say a person was a female in their previous life, and in this life they are a male. But what happens is the soul is not identifying with this body. The soul is identifying with the previous life's body. And that's why that person is a male, but they feel like a female. So this happens at times. A small number of people, just like different people have different kinds of karma because of which they, whatever body they have, some bodies are too short, too tall, too fat, too thin, too dark, too fair. Everybody has a different degree of discomfort with their body. So for some people, it is radical discomfort. So yes, in the past, homosexuality was treated as something degraded, and people were condemned for that. And the idea is, yes, if that's the way somebody is born, then there is no need to condemn them. So in the past, there were the gay rights people fought, and we should also be accepted. We should also be allowed to live the way we are, and that is fine. But where society has gone now in the last 20-30 years is in the past, the ideas, especially in the Western world, Vedic tradition was much broader. Christianity was in Christianity, there is no clear difference between body and the soul. So because of that, what happens is, they say there are only two genders, and somebody with homosexual, it just confuses the Christian sense of self. Because although they talk about a soul, there is no clear difference between body and soul for them. So there was a very strong criticism of homosexuality and things like that. So in the past, the idea was homosexuality should not be tolerated. But now it has become, in the West at least, criticism of homosexuality should not be tolerated. If anybody speaks anything against gays, that person, there is something called cancel culture. That means that person will just be fired from their job, that person will socially condemned. And now the issues have gone so far, it is not just, what all examples are, okay. So there is something called transgender. Transgender means what? There be a man who says that actually I don't identify as a man. So I identify as a woman. So then they will do some biology, they will do some surgery, they will change some chemicals in the body, and then they will become a woman. Supposedly they become a woman. And now what has happened is that, at least this has happened in 3-4 sports in America, and there's one man who became a woman, and now he or she, whatever you want to use, he is participating in female sports. You know, he's just defeating all women. And so now what is happening? So women are, like, especially in swimming, this person was not even as a man, he could not even get admission in this college swimming team in America. But here now, as a woman, he has become the women's champion. And there's some women who spoke against this. You may have changed his, may done some surgery and changed some things, but still, biologically, men and women are different. Men and women are different, and a man participating in the women's sport is patently unfair for women. So there were some women who spoke against this. And even, have you heard of J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter? So she spoke against it, and she was totally condemned. You are a transgender hater. You are spreading transphobia. Transgenders, transphobia means you're causing fear about them. And she faced a lot of criticism because of that. And on top of that, this has been the transgender rights. So a man who has claims to have become a woman, suppose such a person becomes a criminal, that person is put in a jail. Should he put in the men's jail or the women's jail? So he is put in the women's jail because he claims I'm a woman. And then he has raped women over there. And in schools now, there's a man who has changed to a woman, a boy who has changed to a girl, he goes to a girl's restroom and he molests the girls over there. And you cannot speak against that because it's their right. No, if you say that a transgender person did like this, then you are spreading hate about all transgender people. And it's being denied. Now, when a child is born, especially if you fill any forms in America, they don't say that the child is male or female. The child is assigned the gender male or assigned the gender female at birth. The child will grow up and choose his own gender. So now this has become a terrible craze, and it has become such a serious thing that, say, there is a couple in America, in Canada, they had divorced, and they had a teenage boy or a teenage girl. Sorry, since he wanted to, she was in teenage, and he was a boy, and she was saying, I'm a girl, and he was staying with her mother. So mother said, yeah, you can do transgender surgery. And then a father said, no, you should not do it. You go through moods, wait for some time, don't do this so easy. So in America, Canada, and several other countries, if you want to change your gender, actually all the surgery and medical procedure, medical expenses, they're all done by the state for you. If you have cancer, the state will not give free treatment. But if you want to do transgender surgery, the state will pay for it. Why? Because it is your right. No, the state should protect the rights of the individual. So what happened is, this father, he opposed it. But somehow, based on his rights, they took it and he did the surgery. That boy did surgery and become a girl. And then after that, what happened is, his father, he still referred to her as a boy. And so somebody has changed their gender from male to female. And then if you refer to them as a male, that is called as dead naming. Dead naming means that person who's a male is already dead. I'm a female now. So dead naming is considered a serious offense. And what happened was, he repeatedly referred to as a boy. He said, I'm a girl. Then she complained to the police. And his father was put in jail for 3 months. And he had to pay $35,000 fine. And he was told for the rest of your life, you cannot come within 100 meters of this child whom you have violated. So it is crazy overall, the way things are going. So it's not just, okay, somebody is uncomfortable with the body, they gays want to stay their own way, somebody wants to change their surgery. I'm not saying what is right or wrong. I'm talking here about how this is claimed to be a right. It's claimed to be a right, and they think that anybody who opposes this, that person is bigoted, narrow-minded, spreading hatred, and such a person should be condemned. So they don't think of this as a lowering of sexual morality. They consider anybody who opposes this has low sexual morality. That person is immoral. So similarly, another issue is abortion. So even in America in the past, they understood that abortion should be for exceptional cases. Now, say if there is a risk to the mother because of some problems, or maybe there has been rape or something like that. It should be, when they legalized abortion, also the idea was it should be safe and rare. But now the idea is that recently in America there was a Roe v. Wade case where the Supreme Court said that you don't have a right to abortion. There is no constitutional right to abortion. So each legislative assembly will decide on its own whether they want to allow abortion or not. And that created such a furor that there was an article in New York Times, abortion is an absolute moral good. And anybody who opposes abortion is evil. And what is the reasoning for that? Now, Prabhupada would say that if a man and a woman come together, then if there is no sense of responsibility, if there is no dharma, there is no marriage, then what happens? The woman becomes pregnant and the man may go away scot-free. The woman is burdened with it. So, therefore, there should be sexual restraint and sexual responsibility should be there. But the reasoning is here, it's the opposite. That, yes, it's true that a woman becomes pregnant when there is sexual contact. But why should a woman become pregnant? He says, nature has been unfair to women by burdening them with pregnancy. So they say, pregnancy is biological slavery and abortion is technological liberation. So the idea is that if anybody is opposing abortion, you are taking away the freedom of women. And by this, now abortion at various levels. Now, so what happens is sometimes abortion goes wrong. I can say abortion itself is wrong, but because now there are many videos which are there. If you search, that actually as sonography and other technology started getting advancing, you could clearly see that the fetus is alive. The fetus has a heartbeat, fetus has limbs, and the fetus is a person. So, but when you say abortion goes wrong, what that means is that basically how abortion is done is there are various ways, but one of the ways is that basically the fetus is killed in the womb. But suppose somehow abortion goes wrong means the fetus does not die in the womb and the fetus comes out alive. Then what to do at that time? So several of the liberal states in America, they said that fetus can be killed. In fact, there was the atheistic philosopher Peter Singer. He said that actually women should be allowed the right to kill the child even after he's born. When he published an article on this journal of bioethics, and there's a furor. He says, what kind of monster will say something like this? And his response was, no, you people are simply being sentimental, I am scientific. From the point of view of science, the location makes no difference to the status. So, if the fetus can be killed inside the womb, fetus can be killed outside the womb also. So, he was justifying that. Now, of course, that has not been legalized. But the point is, abortion is seen as a right now. And anybody who opposes that, the argument is that, who are men to tell a woman what to do with their body? Well, okay, but it's not just a woman doing something with her body. It is the future of the human race. Is that the child is there. Child doesn't come automatically by a woman's will. It's a man and a woman both are involved, and it is the future of humanity. So everybody has a say in that. Now, of course, we can discuss various things. Here, I'm not. The point of this analysis is not in any way to criticize or condemn women or any particular group. It is to just look at the radical change in social standard that has happened. Now there are, rather than saying that women are bad when they want to come do abortion, we need to ask another question. How has society come to such a level where so many women want to commit abortion, want to do abortion, get abortion done? So what has happened? There are social structures have become disrupted. Families are not supportive. Having children has become very expensive, and many other things have happened by that. So we'll discuss that. But the point I'm making simply is that sexual morality, sexual moral standards have changed a lot. And so here, rather than think, okay, abortion is a bad thing, but somehow I had to do it. Now, like in Krishna consciousness, we share our story. Okay, how did I come to Krishna consciousness? So when there was some opposition to abortion, so what happened was there were left-wing feminists. They started saying that share your abortion story. They proudly started sharing. This is what I went, and this is what I did, and this is what I did, and it's become like a meme on social media. Share your story, share your abortion story, as if it's something very good you did. Well, it is actually killed a child. Now somebody say, no, it's not a child. It is just a fetus. It is just a lump of flesh, whatever terminology you use. So the problem is that we don't treat it like that. Suppose a couple is expecting a child, and then when they go to do some medical testing, and then they get the first images, sonography or whatever, and the doctor may show, this is the head of your child, this is the arms coming out, the legs coming out, and the parents, they are so delighted. They say, oh, this is my child, that the child is going to come out. So when you want the child, then it is not a fetus, it's a child. When you don't want, it becomes a fetus. It just becomes a lump of flesh. Now, our wanting or not wanting is not going to change the status of that. So the point I'm making over here is that the idea of sexual morality has changed so much that abortion is seen as a moral right. And anybody who opposes abortion is either seen as ignorant or outright evil. And then beyond that, there is, I mentioned about this yesterday, about obscenity. There has always been some kind of obscene art has always been there throughout history. In India, in the West, everywhere it has been there. But that has been in some corners of society. But now, what happened is, there are several countries where pornography is considered a fundamental right. Nobody has the authority to obstruct your access to pornography. And now pornography involves clearly, mainly it is men who see porn. Women, what they do is they read and hear. So there is a whole genre called pormance. Pormance novels is what? They are romance novels, but with excessive degree of obscenity, but in words, written. And these kind of novels, they sold millions and billions of copies they've sold. And there are people, just like the porn industry gives you a lot of money, the pormance novel industry also leads to a lot of money. But the point is that there is, so basically there's, at least in the porn industry, there's objectification of women. There is, a woman is treated not as a person with whom you want to have a relationship, as just an object to be bent and twisted and penetrated for one's pleasure. So it's complete objectification. But the idea is, for a woman, nobody has a right to tell you what to wear. So it is my freedom to wear whatever I want, and if I don't want to wear anything, that is my right. So that is my right. So the whole idea became an issue of rights. And now, okay, the idea of making everything an issue of rights. Now, of course, in the West also people are recognizing that not from an ethical perspective, but from a sociological perspective, there are severe problems due to pornography. One big problem is that, okay, it's a little explicit. One big problem is that when young men, they get used to pornography. And there is such fantastic kind of depiction over there that when they want to meet with another person, they want to maybe have children, they don't get excited enough to actually have sexual contact with a real person. And that's why what is happening, many people who have no religious or spiritual inclination, they are also saying that no, we should not. There's a whole called no fab movement. Fab is like a slang word for indulging in porn and whatever comes after that. So sociological consequences are also disastrous. So with respect to abortion, what has happened is that as abortion has become more and more, like yesterday I mentioned, especially among the Caucasian population, the white Americans, there are very few children. And there are more pets than children in those families. There are more pets than children. So there is a population imbalance. We were talking a few decades ago about population explosion, population going up. Well, in America, in Europe, the population would have rapidly gone down if it had not been for immigrants. Indians, Arabic people, Chinese people. They go there and they are reproducing and they are having children. The Caucasian population is going down, severely going down. So the point is, society has radically changed. And that's a prabhavanti ugra karma. One thing is kimanyat kama hetukam. Yeah, there is no God and I just want to enjoy my senses. That is okay, that's just sensuality which is there. But here there is intellectual rationalization. So yeah, if somebody was irresponsible in being sexually active, and then they have they get pregnant, they say just get rid of it. So what has happened over here is there's a change from something which is unavoidable, which is bad, but we have to do it. So this is right. What's wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with it. Anybody who says this is wrong, that person is wrong. And so how did things change so much? But this is a huge change in sexual morality. And okay, I could speak one more thing, but let's go ahead for this. So this inversion of morality. So what it means is, as I said, that all these changes in the society, those from a traditional orientation, they will see this as moral degradation. But those who are postmodern people, they see this as a moral elevation. And actually, I am so broad-minded that if somebody commits an abortion, that's their right. I fully accept it. I'm so broad-minded that that whatever dress you want to wear, you can wear that. It's not that one person has to control another person. That's not the point. But the point is that our actions have social consequences. We cannot just function based on rights alone. Now, there are rights and there are responsibilities. So, the idea that, say, somebody is gay and they need their space to be gay, society should not condemn them for being gay, that's fine. But somebody says that I am gay and all of society was organized so that the marriage is heterosexual marriage. So, why should it be like that? Why should it be like that? So if you search on Google, especially in America, if you search for marriage or wedding photos on Google Images, you won't just find a man and woman married. You'll say man and woman are also marriages there. Women and women also marriages there. So you'll find photos like that. So Google search engine, they deliberately change the algorithm to have a more inclusive idea of marriage. So marriage is not only heterosexual, marriage can also be homosexual. That is their idea. And this has gone to in schools in America. Somebody maybe in 3rd grade, 4th grade, in our schools we read stories, say, in English and other languages. So in schools over there, they'll talk about family. Oh, there are 2 gays and they have a family. And then they have a child. So now what has happened is there is the idea that somebody is, recently there was a American Supreme Court judge nominee. So when she was being nominated, she was a very liberal person. So she was asked, what is a woman? Because what has happened is, according to this whole, due to sexual revolution, they want to eradicate all difference between man and woman are absolutely equal. Well, there should not be discrimination against any gender, that is one thing. But to absolutize equality. So there are those people who I earlier said about sports. So they said that like in swimming, at least swimming is not a contact sport. But recently there was a man who was a novice boxer, and he became a female, and now he is saying, I'll participate in women boxing. Contact sports would be disastrous. That men physically, if they are going to punch a woman, no, it will be disastrous. So at least in contact sports that has not come. But they are saying, why is there so much discrimination in contact sports? So the female boxers are opposed to it, but everybody else is saying we should allow them. Not everybody else, not everybody else. Those who are campaigners for these rights, so these kind of rights. So it's a crazy situation, and they think, if you don't allow women to participate, if you don't allow transgender people, man who has become a woman, to participate in female sports, you are so biased. So how long will the bias in boxing against transgender continue? It's in women's boxing. It's not a bias. It's one thing for athletic sports, but contact sports, it will be disastrous. The sports like rugby or football, American football is quite aggressive. You just punch and knock down the other person. If a man, the biological man who hits a woman and knocks him down, there can be severe injury. So the overall thing is that rather than seeing, this is just common. So she's a Supreme Court judge. She was asked this question. She was a very liberal person. She was asked, what is a woman? And now, there's a straightforward answer to this. There's a biological differences between men and women. She says, no, I can't answer this question because I'm not a biologist. She actually said that. There's YouTube clips about it. And there was a documentary made about this. What is a woman? And it received a lot of review, a lot of positive reviews by conservatives, and by liberals, they condemned it. So the point I'm making is, Krishna says, Ya Nisha Sarva Bhutanam Tasyam Jagrat Sanyam. What is night for all living beings is day for some people. So like that, the worldview has changed completely. So why do they think this is moral elevation? Because their idea is society is freed from repressive and irrational taboos. Taboo means what? Something which you should not do. And why you should not do? It's just a superstition. So the idea that one should, that say men and women should go to separate bathrooms, that is just a social taboo. Why? Now, if a man claims to be a woman, he should go to a women's bathroom. That all these considered as men and women, they should, if they want to have sex, at least they should be married. Hello, that's just a taboo. Well, okay, you can call it taboo and you can say that you can reject it. But what is the result of that? See, the result is that nowadays in India, in many Indian movies, Bollywood movies, they say that, they say a man and a woman, let them live together. Now you live together and then you decide whether you're compatible and then you get married. And movies depict this as if it is something which is liberating. But the problem with this idea is that they say that there are many surveys done in the West that couples who had live-in relationships, if they get married also afterwards, their marriage lasts far lesser than people who have traditional marriages. Why? Because there is one thing which is compatibility. There is another thing which is commitment. And okay, you can actually speaking, no two people are entirely compatible. There can be less and greater degrees of compatibility. But when there is that loosening of the traditional standards of sexual morality, the result is, where do you stop over there? How far do you go and where do you stop? And so sociologically speaking, live-in relationships, if they at all go into marriages, they don't last very long. And then they just get, the society degenerates more and more. And when there are no marriages, it's difficult to have children. Sometimes there are single parent children, usually single mother, sometimes there are single father also. Now those who do that, they're doing a lot of sacrifice to be able to alone take care of a child. But they cannot play the role of both the mother and the father. And because of that, the result is that children grow up malformed. If children don't get the shelter of both mother and father, then they don't grow up very well. And especially when the idea among women is, men are unreliable, men are terrible, so we don't need a man. So with respect to abortion, one more thing is that there are many top Fortune 500 companies. What they do is they tell women, you want to have children, but you should have a career. So you want to have a child. Right now you're 20, 25, 30. No, you wait till 50. And when you're 50, when you are well situated in your career, there is attained respectable amount of success, then you can have a child. But biologically, men have sexual potency for longer amount of time. Women can't have children. This is no problem. At the age of 20, 25, 30, you can harvest your eggs. You give your eggs to us, we will preserve them. And at the age of 50, when you are ready to have a child, you can take the eggs out, you can fertilize the eggs, and you can have a child. And there are endowments for this. So actually, in several companies, if a woman wants to do an abortion, the company will not only pay for the abortion, company will pay the woman for doing the abortion. Now, why is that? Because what happens is, if a woman becomes pregnant, then she will not be working. So they have to live for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months, and they have to keep paying her for that. So instead of that, paying her to do an abortion is much cheaper for a company. So it's a very cynical calculation. And the women also think, these are our rights, we can have a child later. But it doesn't go. Somebody at the age of 50 and then they try to have a child. You may get a child, but raising a child is not an easy thing. And at the age of 50 to raise a child, and especially by that time the woman is a single mother, she's trying to raise a child. It's extremely difficult. So children grow up malformed. And that's why many Indians, not just Indians, many Chinese people, even many Arabic people, when they go to America, or they go to America for better career prospects, but many of them are going more and more towards homeschooling their children. Because all these ideas the children get exposed to in the colleges, in the schools, in the colleges. What happened during the pandemic, that then they're schooling from home. The children were not going to school. So the parents got to see what the teachers are teaching the children in school. Because the school was, basically it was Zoom classes. And the children came to know that, the parents came to know that. So in America, it is that if a girl wants to have an abortion, she doesn't even have to inform her parents. So she can call a number and the state will pay for the abortion. Not only that, if a girl or a boy, they want to change their gender, they think, okay, I'm not this, I want to change their gender, they don't have to even inform their parents. Now, if they want to get a driving license, they need to get a consent from their parents. But they want to do irreversible surgery to their body, they don't need consent from the parents. So what happened was, when in this kind of ideas, but this parents saw that what the children are being taught, parents became alarmed. And they said, we don't want such things to be taught to the children. So there's a left-wing American politician, he said, I don't think that parents should have any say in what their children are being taught in school. The children do not belong to the parents. The children belong to the state. The children belong to the state? It's a horrifying idea. That idea is that children belong to the state means we want children to grow up being very inclusive and tolerant, accepting gay, accepting transgender, and the parents are usually old-fashioned, parents are religious, parents are primitive. So we don't want the parents to shape the morals of the children. We will shape the morals of the children. And the parents were outraged. The parents should have no say in the education of children. So from that time on, this particular incident happened just 5-6 months ago. So there has been a even greater spurt in homeschooling because parents want to protect their children from being educated in stuff like this. So there is, as I said, there is moral policing. Moral policing means what? If you oppose any of these things, you are either a bigoted person or you are a phobic person. Bigoted means you are evil and you hate a particular group of people, or you are phobic. Phobic means you are irrationally afraid of such people. Well, it's not irrational fear. A parent who has trained, now in India, there is this ethos of women being liberated. And yes, there has been some cases where there's been exploitation and nobody should be exploited. So the idea of women playing sports and succeeding in sports, there are a lot of movies in Bollywood about that nowadays. But so the parent is training their daughter to become a good sports player, a big athlete. And then suddenly a man who has become a woman comes in that sports. And then the parents oppose it, and you are so bigoted. You are bigoted, you are phobic. It's become a crazy world over there. That's why they should not be just silenced, they should be condemned. That's what is called as cancel culture. Cancel culture means that such a person should be cancelled. That person does not even deserve to exist. The idea is like that. As I mentioned, Yanisha Sarva Bhutana. So opposite views come from opposite worldviews. So what is the worldview that is leading to all this? Let's try to understand this. So the ideology behind the mentality, that's what I'll discuss. So the postmodern people, they consider all this not as moral degradation but moral elevation, because they inhabit a different moral universe. They inhabit a different moral universe. What does this mean, a different moral universe? So some people said, how has the social morality changed so much? Sexual morality changed so much. So you say, society has changed. Now, in the past, if a man and a woman would be sexually active before marriage, and a woman would become pregnant. And then there was in America, in the Western world, something called a shotgun marriage. Shotgun marriage means what? If a woman has become pregnant, her father would come with a gun to the man, take responsibility, get married her. That's called a shotgun marriage. So now, of course, this was not forced. This was consensual only. But now, after that, the birth control pills came up and other things came up. Then what happens is, it says if a woman becomes pregnant, it's your problem. Why did you take the birth control pill? Why are you not careful? Now you get rid of it. So the idea is that we may think this has changed because social circumstances have changed now. Men and women are mixing freely. That's why this kind of things are happening. But it's not just a change in social circumstances. There is a whole worldview behind this. There is an ideology, there is a philosophy because of which this has changed. A radically different philosophy. So what is that philosophy? There are two parts to it. This is the ends and the means. This is what Krishna has mentioned in this 16.8 and 9. In one sense, if you look at what is happening in the world today and then look at 16.8 and 9 in the Gita, you'll see it's very prophetic. So this whole different worldview has two things. What is life meant for? What is the ends for life? And what is the way to achieve those ends? So what is the purpose of life? Ultimately, we are just biological beings. And we have certain biological needs, and among them the highest is sexual. So sexual pleasure is considered the purpose of life. Kim anyad kama hetukam. So when we say, some people say, oh, we are the body, or we are not the body or the soul. It's not just a simple belief. I believe that I am the body, I believe I am the soul. If actually we understand I am the body, what does it mean? Bodily pleasure becomes the sole purpose of life. If there is no God, that means there is no standard of right or wrong. Whatever I think is right. Whatever you think is right for you. So the purpose of life is sexual pleasure. And the means for it is, so there is the end and the means. When you talk about a philosophy has many things in it. There can be Greek philosophy, there can be Russian philosophy, there can be Native American philosophy. Philosophy can have many things in it, but ultimately to understand a philosophy, you can look at the two things over there. What is sadhya and what is sadhana? What is the ends and what is the means? So within the materialistic worldview, once we reject God, the ends is sexual pleasure. And the means is anything that helps you in getting sexual pleasure, that should be accepted. That should be promoted. That should be championed. And then anything that obstructs one in getting sexual pleasure, that should be opposed. That should be condemned. That should be demonized. That should be completely demonized. And so this worldview is spreading across the world, and it's not inconsequential. It has serious consequences even from a material perspective. Leave alone spiritual. Somebody who's engaged in a lot of sexual indulgence, they will not go to spiritual. They will not rise to spiritual consciousness. Forget that. Even a materially orderly society is not possible if one has indiscriminate unrestrained sexual activity. So I'll conclude with 2 points, and then we can have some questions over here. So where does this worldview come from? That the purpose of life is sexual pleasure, and any means you want, you take them and go for sexual pleasure. So there were Marx and Freud. They are two very influential thinkers from the previous century. Let's say previous 2 centuries. Any of you have heard about Marx? You have heard Marxism, Marxist. So Marx had Karl Marx. His theory was basically a theory of class struggle. Class struggle means that society is always divided between the haves and the have-nots, the rich and the poor, or the powerful and the powerless. And it says the rich always exploit the poor. And therefore, if we want happiness in society, there has to be liberation. Liberation is what? So I don't know if human suffering is due to social exploitation of the disadvantaged class by the advantaged class. So advantage can be in terms of wealth, it can be in terms of political power, it can be in terms of social influence. So the powerful exploit the powerless. And so therefore, what is the solution? His idea was take away the power from the powerful and give it to the powerless. So take away wealth from the wealthy people and redistribute it to everyone. So his idea was that will lead to liberation of people from social discrimination, from social exploitation. There was this theory of liberation. The society, human history is a class struggle. Now we can go into it elaborately, what is wrong with it, but I'll not go into that. Now wherever Marxist theory has been tried, it has been an unmitigated disaster. Now, many people now say religion causes wars, religion leads to terrorism. Well, it has happened, but which were the 2 biggest wars in recent history? World War I and World War II. Neither of them, religion was an issue. They are not fought based on religion. And what happened? 40 million people were killed. 40 million in the Second World War, about 4 or 5 million in the First World War. But more than the toll during the First World War and Second World War combined was the toll that Marxism took without any war. From 1917 to around 1989. 1917 was the Russian Revolution, when the Tsar was gulleted, the Tsar was killed and communism took over there, Marxism, communism. 1989 was the Operation Perestroika and Mikhail Gorbachev, communism, USSR fell over there. So from 1917 to 1989, in Russia and in China, China was also a red state. Red means basically communist. So Marxist communist states. 100 million people were killed by the state itself without any war. Double the number of people who were killed in the First World War and Second World War. He killed anybody who is supposed to be opposing the state. You are a wealthy person, therefore you are a criminal. Kill you and take all your wealth and give it to the poor. So the idea that there is disadvantage, some people advantaged, and take away all their advantages, destroy the advantaged people and redistribute wealth in society. That was the Marxist idea. Now the problem with this idea is that yes, there is disparity in society, but all disparity means difference in stature. All disparity is not due to discrimination. Now, some people may be wealthy because they are talented, because they are hardworking. So what happened in Ukraine especially, there were these wealthy farmers and they said, you are exploited, you are wealthy, they just just imprisoned. They had gulags. Gulags were prisons in Siberia where they were sent. They sent them all prisons and gave the farmland to all poor people. But the problem was all these poor people. Again, I'm not criticizing poor people over here. There's the assumption that the wealthy people are bad and the poor people are all good. That the assumption was disastrously wrong. The poor people were given farms, but they had no knowledge of how to do farming. And in between the First World War and Second World War, Ukraine had one of the worst famines in human history, where almost 7 to 10 million people were killed. Simply because their land was there, but nobody knew how to farm properly. So Marxism has had terrible consequences. And then there is Freudian theory. Freud, have you heard of Freud? Freud, you have heard? Freud, Sigmund Freud was a psychologist, psychotherapist primarily. So he had in some ways he was brilliant. In other places he was brilliantly demoniac. So he had this idea in his childhood. He felt some sexual attraction for his mother. And he was, society said, what kind of horrible person is this? So he curbed that desire. And then he grew up, and he said, actually, this kind of attraction is natural. Every boy has a sexual attraction towards his mother, and every girl has a sexual attraction towards her father. And because society suppresses that is why society has so many problems. So this is the key for humanity to be happy is to avoid any repression. Repression of desire should be avoided. And the solution is just have uninhibited expression of desires. So now what happens in society? Anybody who advocates freedom for indulging in your desires, that person will very easily become popular. Now, suppose there are two doctors who are treating diabetes. And one doctor says, hey, you cannot eat any sweets and take this medicine. The other doctor says, take this medicine, you can eat whatever sweets you want. Which doctor will be more popular? Second one, obviously, isn't it? So this is what happened. Freud's ideas became very popular, and his idea was nobody should be repressed. All repression should be avoided. So these are two prominent theories. So basically, it says what they say is that Freud eradicated God from human psychology, and Marx eradicated God from human society or sociology specifically. So means that both of them were atheists, both of them were aggressively atheistic, and both of them said that actually you just have to get rid of religion. Freud considered religion to be like a disease, and Marx, of course, famously said religion is like a opium. And both of them rejected God. So the result of this is what? The sexual revolution. So there's Freudian repression, which is said to be the cause of suffering, and there's a Marxist liberation, which is a exploitation you have to remove. So both of these ideas were combined. And combination is that we want liberation from repression. But what kind of repression? Repression of all sexual desires. So the idea is that this whole ideology, where it's come, like if a boy wants to change his gender, then he can do it without his parents informing the parents. Why? Because the parents are powerful and the children are powerless. So what is the duty of the state? To correct the power imbalance. Take away from the power from the parents and give power to the children. So those who are homosexual, they are a minority, they are powerless. Those who are heterosexual, they are majority. The heterosexual are powerful, the homosexual are powerless. So take power away from the heterosexual and give it to the homosexuals. Those who are transgender, they are in a minority. Those who are not transgendered, they are in the majority. So therefore, we have to empower the transgender. So the idea is all disparity due to discrimination and exploitation? Not necessarily. So this idea, say like in a class, they tried this in Marxism actually. They said that, why should there be a discrimination among the students? Now, why should one student come first in class and another student come last? So they decided that, no, in a class, let all the students give exams, and at the end of the exams, the student with the top grade, the students will get different number of marks. So we will take all the marks, sum them, divide them by the number of students, and all the students will get the average mean number of marks. Everyone. They actually tried this. They said, this way we will avoid discrimination in education. What do you think was the result of this? Yeah, the students who could study and excel, they said, even if I study, I'm only going to get average marks, so why study? And those who were anyway lazy, they said, even if I don't study, I'm going to get good marks. So why study? So it led to complete deterioration. So, see, there is definitely a power imbalance in society. There's a power imbalance between parents and children. There is a talent imbalance between, say, talented students and not so talented students. But is it always bad? Well, not necessarily. Those who are not, the parents, they have more power than the children. And sometimes the parents may exploit the children. But that is rare. If parents were always exploiting children, humanity would not have survived. Even people who are exploitative, when they have children, they actually take care of the children. They actually are quite selfless in taking care of children. So, this whole worldview that has come about, it is based on a complete misunderstanding. It's complete misunderstanding of how humanity works. So, whenever there is any hierarchy, that one person is more powerful, another person is less powerful, that does not necessarily mean the powerful will exploit the powerless. So, like now the idea is that somebody who is more powerful, they can guide and help those who are powerless also. So, in humanities in America, in some universities, the idea is, why should the teacher or the professor be more influential in the students? So they say that, what is the characteristic of a good professor? So the professor should not speak more than 25% in the class. So the class is a forum for students to have their voice. Well, students have a voice. Well, this class is not just a place for students to have a voice. The class is a place for students to learn. So what happens is, when this kind of idea comes up, the result is students don't learn much. Students don't grow much. And so what happened was, they found that the IQ level of students is going down with this kind of education. So now they're saying this IQ test itself is discriminatory. So, etam drishtim avashtabhya nashtadmano alpabuddhaya. So, leave alone spiritually, even sociologically, there is chaos coming up. Now, all this is not to say that this is the way all of Western society or all of American society or European society is. No, the liberals are a small but influential, very powerful, vocal minority. But their influence is huge. And their influence is slowly percolating into India also. And the biggest percolation right now is happening in Bollywood movies, where sexual morality is rapidly being altered through the Bollywood movies. Of course, India is right now at from the American perspective, it is a very old-fashioned stage, but things are going in that direction. I talk with not just devotee parents in America, but even general Hindu parents in America, even Christian parents. Parenting has become an extremely difficult thing. Many devotees or many Hindus also, they prefer to come back to India, because they say India is a better place for raising our children. America is a good place to go and earn money, maybe to enjoy life for some time. But once we have to get the serious business of life, of having children, having a family, we'd much rather do it in India. So now how has all this happened? See, when we say whether I believe in God or I don't believe in God, it's not just one belief. That belief has many consequences. If there is no God, then there is no ordering principle to your life. There is no higher purpose of life. And when there is no higher purpose, the purpose gravitates down to the lowest. The lowest is sense pleasure at whatever cost. I don't care for the cost at all. So, kim anyat kamahaitukam. I'll conclude with 2 points. This is again caveat. It is not that all atheistic people will become hedonistic. Hedonism is like completely unrestricted materialism. All atheistic people will not necessarily become hedonistic. There are atheists also who are thoughtful people. There are atheists also. Maybe they have had bad experiences with religion. They had bad experiences with religious people. They never got a rational presentation of religion or spirituality. That's why they became atheistic. But maybe from their upbringing, from their purva life, from previous lives, samskaras, impressions, even atheists may be in the mode of goodness. See, Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, it's more psychological. It's not intrinsically spiritual. So an atheist may be vegetarian, an atheist may be a humanitarian, an atheist may be an environmental activist. So it's not that all atheists will necessarily become materialistic or especially hedonistic. So this is not a criticism or condemnation of all atheists. Atheists can also be good people. But atheists are good people not because of their atheism, but in spite of their atheism. Atheists may be good people. They may be moral, they may be polite, they may be cultured in their own way. But there is nothing in atheism which makes them good. Because if there is no God, the purpose of life is pleasure, is enjoyment. Then why should there be any boundaries to my enjoyment? If they have some boundaries, it has not come from their atheistic philosophy. It has come from their upbringing. It has come from their previous lives impressions. That's why they are like that. So it's not that atheism will make everybody hedonistic. We should not hate atheistic people. No, nobody should be hated for that matter. But if atheists are good people, it is not because of their atheism, it is in spite of their atheism. And the last point is that, see, this is the fundamental difference. I have many points, but I'll just make one point here. And this is a fundamental difference between how Prabhupada presented Krishna consciousness and how religion was presented in the West during Prabhupada's times. Often Christians have the idea of sin, and don't be sinful, you will go to hell and you will suffer in hell. So Christians also talk about this, you have to control, they don't use the word senses and control the senses. They say that sex has to be within the boundaries of marriage and things like that. They're quite aggressively critical of sexual immorality, and that is good. But their emphasis was often on, if you do this, you will go to hell. Now, Srila Prabhupada, now he in one sense talks about sense control far more than even most religious people. Even in Christians, they drink. They say they drink, but don't become a drunk. That is their idea. But the four regulative principles are like, even from a most traditional Christian perspective, they say, we're following this, and what is the point of living? There's a famous Christian thinker. He said the taste of wine is the proof that God loves us. If God didn't love us, how could something so tasty as wine exist? So all this is a part of their culture. So the point I'm making is that Prabhupada, in one sense, the four regulative principles that he introduced, or not reintroduced, he talked about in the Western world, they are in one sense quite restrictive. But Prabhupada didn't talk based on fear and condemnation. That, no, if you do this, you will go to hell. Prabhupada said that actually you are not simply a physical being. You are a spiritual being. And you are meant for higher happiness. Physical pleasure is so temporary. It is, Prabhupada used the word tucham. It is insignificant. It has a beginning, it has an end. And you are meant for something more than that. So Prabhupada's presentation of spirituality was not fear-based, but intelligence-based. Before I was introduced to Krishna consciousness, I read many spiritual teachers, prominent Indian spiritual teachers. They all had some good wisdom to speak. But Prabhupada was quite emphatic in his philosophy. Many Indian spiritual teachers say, Aham Brahmasmi. I am spirit, I am Brahman. It was Prabhupada who alone, as far as I have seen, who emphasized the corollary of that. If I am spirit, that means I am not the body. That no other teachers talk about it. Oh, you are spirit. Yes, you are spirit. You are spirit, now go and eat meat. You are a spirit, now go and enjoy your senses. That's your personal life, you choose that. But Prabhupada said that if we are enjoying our senses, If we are enjoying at the physical level, then our consciousness will get caught at the physical level. And if a consciousness gets caught at the physical level, then we will not be able to experience spiritual happiness. So Prabhupada taught based on the level of wisdom. Now, yes, in our shastras also, fifth canto, there's description of hell and people who go to hell for various wrongdoings. But Prabhupada, that was never the central focus of his speech. If you do this, you'll go to hell. If you do this, you'll go to hell. Prabhupada hardly ever spoke like that. There is this book, Laws of Nature, where on the backside there are the various suffering that people will suffer, where if they go to wrong activity, that's described. But that cover was not sanctioned by Prabhupada. And if you read Laws of Nature, hell is not the prominent description over there. Prabhupada is talking about the principles of living. So the idea is Prabhupada foresaw that this is not just like a lifestyle change. It's a philosophical challenge. And that's why it has to be challenged philosophically. Just telling people, the society is becoming so degraded nowadays. When we say society, India, so when they say that it is becoming so westernized, it is becoming so degraded. Some Indians may say like that. But it's not just a lifestyle change. Yes, there's a lifestyle change, but beyond that, behind that, there is a worldview change. The worldview changes. I'm just a physical creature, and sexual pleasure is the highest pleasure in life. So why allow or entertain, tolerate anything that will obstruct the highest pleasure? So Prabhupada started by saying, the fundamental, you are not a physical being. And therefore, sexual pleasure is not in the highest pleasure. It is actually a diversion from the highest pleasure. It is something which deprives us of the highest pleasure. So, Srila Prabhupada, he challenged it at the philosophical level. And that's why it has to be analyzed philosophically. So, atheism will lead to hedonism because yesterday I talked about how the lust can occupy the senses, the mind, and even the intelligence. So in mainstream society, now when you say it's just a lifestyle change, means people's senses, they're engaging their senses in a different way. Their mind is filled with all kind of fantasies. But it's not just a lifestyle change. It has become a worldview change. It's a philosophy change. And that's why the intelligence has also become contaminated and perverted. And to the extent we focus on philosophical presentation of spirituality, to that extent, this overall devastating change in society can be gradually countered. Otherwise, it's extremely difficult. Just focus on the lifestyle and say this is objectionable lifestyle. You object to me, that is objectionable. Get lost. So, at a lifestyle level, in India, it still works because there is some sense of morality is there. But as India is becoming more and more westernized, those people think that we are better in being sexually free. We are morally superior and you are morally regressive because you are restricting us. It is not simply a matter of being regressive. It's a matter of what will actually help us become who we are meant to be. Find the happiness that we are actually longing for. That happiness will be found only at the spiritual level. So when we understand the philosophy ourselves and then we share the philosophy with others, then we can challenge and change society at a foundational level. That Henry David Thoreau said that you can cut 1,000 shoots, 1,000 branches, but if the root is there, the tree will grow again. If you cut the root, the tree will go completely. So Prabhupada was attacking the root. Prabhupada was attacking the worldview, the materialistic worldview, not just the materialistic lifestyle. And the materialistic worldview, when it is challenged and changed, then when it is replaced by spiritual worldview, then spiritual lifestyle will automatically come. So 1,000 hackings at the shoot, at the branches of a tree is like condemning, oh, society is so degraded, this person is so terrible, that person is so terrible, that person is so terrible. But the hacking at the root is understanding the philosophy and countering the philosophy itself, changing the worldview. The Bhagavad-Gita offers us those resources. And Srila Prabhupada, by his prescient, by his far-sighted emphasis on identity, Prabhupada didn't start with God. Prabhupada called the society International Society for Krishna Consciousness, but Prabhupada started with identity. That because our identity is not physical, it is spiritual. Therefore, physical pleasure is not the purpose of life. Rather, physical pleasure is a distraction from the purpose of life. Focus on the purpose of life. So that's how we all can not only protect ourselves from these sweeping cultural changes that are coming in society, but we can also counter those changes, or at least be an agent in the countering of these devastating changes that are happening in human society. So I'll summarize. I spoke today about three main things. First is how sexual morality has changed so rapidly in today's world. So I talk about three examples from homosexuality, abortion, and obscenity. And especially in homosexuality, I'll talk about transgender. How it is not just considered to be something which I should be allowed to do, but anybody who opposes this should not be allowed to exist also. They should be considered evil and condemned. And so it is an inversion of morality. So how does inversion of morality happen? It's not just a lifestyle change where people are becoming more degraded. They think they are becoming more elevated, they are becoming more progressive. Why? Because the worldview is that if I am just a physical being and sensual pleasure, in which sexual pleasure is the highest, is the purpose of life, then anybody who is in any way obstructing that person is my enemy. That person is to be disempowered, if not eliminated. They think that it is right to pursue pleasure, whatever that's the purpose, and anything obstructing should be avoided. That's how we have. So they think that it's morally superior, but so just lamenting that society is becoming morally degraded won't help. Change is what is required is that the worldview has to be addressed. And Srila Prabhupada's emphasis that aham brahmasmi means you are not a physical being, you're not the body. That starts with, it doesn't focus on lifestyle, it focuses on identity. The worldview centered on identity. And when that is changed, then lifestyle change will automatically result. Without addressing the worldview and identity, advocating lifestyle change will simply seem regressive and will be eventually rejected. So we are all blessed that amidst this devastating cultural change that is happening in the world, we have the anchor of the Bhagavad-Gita and the Bhagavad-Gita's teachings presented to Srila Prabhupada. And by taking shelter of those, we can be protected and we can protect others also. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, I want to ask that is enjoyment and pleasure are same thing or different?
Enjoyment and pleasure are the same thing? Depends. Basically, it depends on how words are used and defined. There is no specific Sanskrit word for enjoyment and pleasure as separate. There is ananda, there is sukha. It depends on context. So I would say that we all long for pleasure and we are meant to get pleasure. But many of the things that promise us pleasure, they take us away from pleasure actually. So in general, in the way Prabhupada used language, Prabhupada generally used the enjoyment in a slightly negative sense. Enjoying mentality. That is, that he is usually associated with physical pleasures. But that's not always it has to be like that. So basically the idea is there are different levels of pleasure. There is physical pleasure and ultimately there is spiritual pleasure. So physical pleasure is to be avoided and spiritual pleasure is to be sought. So you can call physical pleasure as enjoyment and spiritual pleasure you can call it ecstasy. So ecstasy and enjoyment you can differentiate like that if you want. Okay. Any other questions? Maharaj, any comments? Okay, yes.
You know, if you go to China today, you know, it's quite a developed country. The infrastructure is quite impressive. You know, of course, you haven't been to China, but yeah. I can tell you factually that there's many cities and the infrastructure is highly impressive. You know, they have high-speed train systems connecting all the cities. They have very modern facilities. The people live in quite a high standard. You know,
yes, definitely.
It's difficult to accept that you say it's been a disaster.
Definitely. Communism has been a disaster, then how is China so progressive? China so materially progress at least? Well, two things. First is China is like a communist capitalist hybrid. Politically it is communist, but economically it is quite capitalist. That means the rule, the power is centralized in the CCP. So that is the Chinese Communist Party. No, many devotees call me CCP, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So whenever somebody says that, especially in the West, CCP is seen as Chinese Communist Party. So I call them, please say CC, not CCP. So basically, that political structure, the CCP is more or less orchestrated or more or less organized according to communist principles. But there are these, what do you call it, special economic zones, Shanghai and other places where they're developed. They're very capitalist. Actually, they're very low taxes, not a very high level of government oversight in terms of economics. So I'm not saying capitalism is good and communism is bad. That's not my point over here. Capitalism is also exploitative in its own way. But the point is, China's success came primarily after it gave up the communist control of capital. So all the places where it has progressed, politically it is communist, but economically it is quite capitalist. So that the progress happened. See, when Russia fell, USSR fell, at that time China was also quite regressive. 1980s, Ronald Reagan, he was the first person. He was instrumental in disbanding Russia, USSR, and not instrumental. It was one during his time it happened, more or less. And then he felt that China should be rescued from communism, and that's why he had free trade and everything, by which China grew. At that time, nobody thought China will grow so much it'll become a challenge to American superpower and become another superpower. So that's the first thing, that it is a capitalist, and there are special circumstances because of which China was able to progress very rapidly. One of the big factors was that once the Cold War was won, America actually opened its economy for China in a big way. So China could produce things and they could export it to America. So those circumstances, they were initially profitable for America because Americans got cheap goods. But the result of that was eventually American economy went down. All the jobs went from America. And as American economy is still, America is still a superpower. But basically those two factors, the capital, they were a communist capitalist model, hybrid. And after communism fell, China changed its attitude towards the economy. And because they got a lot of help, at least at that time, from America, and so they were able to progress a lot. But beyond that, almost all other countries, if you consider Cuba or other places, even India was never communist, but India was socialist. And why it was socialist? So many villages didn't have drinking water. So many villages didn't have electricity. In 1992, India started liberalization. But then till 2012, with a sluggish pace. 4 or 5 years it was good, and after it became sluggish. In 2012, 2014 onwards, it's become faster. And now India has become the fifth biggest economy in the world. India has exceeded UK also now. And many economists are saying by 2040, India could become the second biggest. India can exceed China also. 2050 definitely. The way things are growing. So I would say my understanding is China's success is not because of communism; it's in spite of communism. This could be discussed further. I have read quite a bit about it. We can talk more also. Want to add something?
Well, we could also argue, that it's not really a success, but it's that they become hedonistic, right?
Yes.
It's just they're more hedonistic, so that they're into hell. It's not really a success.
Yes.
The people have become more dependent on material facilities, and they're thinking that's everything in life.
Yeah, that is true. Definitely. It's like I understand there are 3 different levels. There is like material indulgence, material luxury, or material, you could say, degeneration, material degradation. then there is provision of material necessity, and there is lack of material necessity. So we can say material progress in terms of not having material necessities to having material necessities. That is good. And in that regard, progress is desirable. If in India, now if there are many villages where there is no electricity available, there is no drinking water available, there is not even flowing water available. So people have to spend hours just to get that. So if the government can provide that, from not having material necessities to having material necessities, then that is a desirable progress. But what happens is once this, that's one of the problems with capitalism, that say communism in trying to distribute wealth equally ends up for many people not having material necessities also. But capitalism, in the name of facilitating individual initiative, individual talent, what it leads to it may give people material necessities, but it takes them far beyond that, and it inundates, submerges people into material luxury, and that can be a distraction from spirituality. It can be a big distraction. So as you said, when people become hedonistic, it becomes very difficult for them to focus on spirituality. So that's that sweet spot in between, where people are having the necessities taken care of, but they're not gone to the level of luxuries. That is where people are most spiritually receptive. If they are struggling for their material necessities itself, then it is very difficult for them to focus on spirituality. And if they are having too many material luxuries, then also it's difficult to focus on spirituality. So how to do that? Which political system can do? Which socio-political system can do that? Socio-economic or political system can do that? That is a difficult question to answer. Like to add something?
Yes. Yeah, actually, there are 5 communist countries in the world. There, apart from China, there's North Korea, and then Cuba and Laos, and no,
Venezuela, not Venezuela.
Maybe I think that's it. Anyway, but Cuba, you can see something that's something close to what you would call, ideal Marxism. Maybe that. They don't have a lot of luxury, and they have no petrol or anything. They're using bullock carts and stuff. So Cuba is somewhere close to that ideal of Marxism. But of course, Marxism is just, as you pointed out, it's atheism.
Yeah, it's a, there is like, in some ways, Prabhupada said communism and spiritual communism. So the idea that the state, that what is the role of the head of state, the king or whoever is in charge. At one level, it is provision of material needs. At another level, it is also a prevention of material immorality, especially material immorality, especially in terms of it harms other people, it harms society. So if the state, in capitalism, in some way the state becomes too weak, and whatever people want to do, you just do it. Now, it's, you have the money, you have the facility, you have the freedom, you do whatever you want. So in capitalism, in some way, the state may become too weak, and then the morality may become too licentious for people to have spirituality. In communism, the danger is the state may become too strong. When the state becomes too strong, then especially if the state is atheistic, then spiritual life becomes extremely difficult. So in general, if you look at our movement's history also, we have been able to do some preaching mostly in the states which are capitalist. In communists, we have to be we have to go underground, be secret, do things secretly. It's much more difficult to do it. So does that mean capitalism is better? No. Capitalism just presents a different kind of challenges, set of challenges. Maybe those challenges are relatively easier to manage, but still they are challenges. So a very weak state as well as a very strong state, both are problematic. The state has to be reasonably strong. Yudhishthira Maharaj was the emperor, but Yudhishthira Maharaj was not the sole king. Now when Ram defeated Ravana, he killed Ravana, Ram did not annex Lanka and make it a part of Ayodhya. Ram handed over Lanka to a person from that particular dynasty itself, Vibhishan. Similarly, when Yudhishthira also, Krishna killed Jayadratha, then Jayadratha's son Sahadev was made the king. So there was although Yudhishthira was the emperor, they did not dissolve the ethnic identity of the local kingdoms. So the head of state was strong, but not overbearingly strong. It was so it's a challenge. Although Yudhishthira performed the Rajasuya Yajna, Drupada was a Shaivite, and Yudhishthira, the Pandavas married Draupadi. So, and it was not that Drupada had to convert to Vaishnavism just because Yudhishthira performed the Rajasuya Yajna. So in the same Mahabharata, where there is the Vishnu Sahasranam, there is also the Shiv Sahasranam. So, to what extent the state is to impose certain things. So, wherever Yudhishthira Maharaj had his influence, people were following Dharma. They were not necessarily following Krishna Bhakti. Dharma in terms of basic principles of morality, like Satyam, Shaucham, Daya, Tapa, Prabhupada talks about. Those were encouraged. Not very encouraged, they were actually promoted quite strongly. So it is a difficult balance to achieve. And when Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that I look forward to a time when we will have high court judges which are Vaishnava Tilak. So I talked to several devotees who studied Bhaktivinoda Thakur quite deeply. I asked, what was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's vision of how this will happen? So basically there are two broad ways. One is that we have a devotee who becomes the head of state, and that person appoints devotees in influential positions like high court judges. The other is, so that's like the top-down approach. The other is that devotees themselves become so competent in their professional fields that even mainstream society recognizes devotees for their competence and gives them respectable posts. And their devotion is not seen as any negative thing. So devotees are appointed to respectable positions. Devotees become political heads of state, political leaders. So there could be like the top-down approach or the bottom-up approach. So the way Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself rose, that was the bottom-up approach. He didn't have any godfather who raised him to that post. It was by the sheer power of his competence that he rose. So in one sense, what Bhaktivinoda Thakur was prophesying was that what he had done, that many others would also be able to do that. So, making a state powerful in today's world, the head of state can become abusive very easily. George Orwell said that the problem with communism is that all people are equal, but some people are more equal than others. What does that mean? That means there are wealthy and there are poor, and they say everybody should be equal. So the wealth should be redistributed from the wealthy to the poor. But in this process, what happens? Those who are going to redistribute the wealth, they become more powerful than the wealthy and the poor both. So you basically want to create a classless society. There's no difference between wealthy and poor. But in creating the classless society, those who are going to create the classless society become a class in themselves. That's why all people are equal, but those who are going to bring about equality become more equal than others. They become more powerful. So at least in recent historical memory, in the Western world we can say, to some extent in India also, that autocratic power, that is very strong in people's minds. Hitler was autocrat, Mussolini was autocrat, and they have caused havoc in society. So making the state too powerful, which is what communism does, of course for humanity, they say for economic equality, but even for a spiritual purpose, if we make the state too powerful, head of state too powerful, whether that will lead to something good in society, that's questionable. Srila Prabhupada, even in ISKCON, Prabhupada himself was like autocrat, but Prabhupada did not appoint one successor Acharya. Prabhupada did not make any one guru like the supreme power. Prabhupada distributed power in his movement also. So whether centralizing too much power, which communism does, whether it will work today, like you said, like a benevolent head of state, a powerful benevolent head of state, that could work in principle, but in practice, how long will that, once power comes, how long will that person stay benevolent? Or even if that person stays benevolent, maybe that person gets assassinated or dies, the next person who ascends in power, will that person be just as benevolent? So political philosophy is quite complicated. I think just a few thoughts about it. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki, Gaur Premanande.
Yes.
His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki Jai. So we'll have, after this powerful session by Prabhu, we'll now have at 12:55, we'll assemble back and we'll have special class by His Holiness Bhakti Vignavanashak Narsimha Swami Maharaj. So please drink water and relax and come back in 15 minutes back. Hare Krishna. Juice. Juice.